Imagine having a button that does the same task whenever you want. Well, that's what functions do. Hey, I'm Skyler Fines, and in this module, we're talking about functions. Functions are one of the most important tools in Python. By the end of this module, you'll know how to define a function, call it, and get your code working smarter, not harder. So what exactly is a function? A function is kind of like a recipe. You write down the steps once, and then you can use it as many times as you want. To define a function in Python, you use the def keyword followed by the function's name, parentheses, and a colon. So let's define a simple function called def myFirstFunction. We'll add a simple print statement. This is a function. Once you've defined a function, you can call it anytime you need. To call the function, you just used its name followed by a parentheses. In this case, we'll call myFirstFunction parentheses. Simple, right? It gets a little bit more complicated than this, but this is really the meat and bones of it. When you call the function, it runs all the code inside it. This is where the magic happens. Instead of you repeating code every time you want to use it, you just call the function. It's efficient and saves you a lot of work. A parameter is like an ingredient that you pass into your function. Instead of hard coding everything, you can give your function inputs that change the way that it works. That way your function isn't stuck doing the same thing every time. It can adapt based on what you give it. Here's an example. We've been using the grocery list variable a lot, and one thing we might want our app to do is calculate the total cost of everything in a list. But instead of hard coding a specific grocery list, we want our function to calculate the total cost of any grocery list we give it. So as long as the format and data types are the same, let's start by creating the skeleton for the function. We start with def and the function's name, calculate total cost, followed by parenthesis and a colon. If you know you want this function but haven't written the logic yet, you could even add a pass for now. Let's create a simple grocery list. We'll add some apples costing $2.37, and we need 6 of them. Then bananas at 79 cents, and we need 12. And finally, strawberries costing $10.25 per container. Now for the calculation, we need a variable to store the total cost and a grocery list to calculate. For each item in the grocery list, it will multiply the amount by the cost. Then we will add that value to the total cost. But in this function, we want it to take any grocery list that we give it from outside the function. So let's remove the hard-coded grocery list and add the parameter grocery list. This tells the function to expect a grocery list value. Now we add a print statement to display the total cost it has calculated. We can call this function just like we learned before, but now we'll give it the value that it's expecting. When we run it, it prints the total cost for us. Now what if we want to get something back from this function? Well, a return value is what your function gives back after it's done running. Kind of like a vending machine. You give it an input and it returns you a snack. Return values allow you to use the result from that function elsewhere in your code. If we add a return to this function, it won't do anything until we tell it what to return, like total cost. This lets us store the value that we returned by the function in a variable and print it from outside the function. Now let's say we have another grocery list with essentials like bread, milk, and eggs. We can call the function the same way and store the result in another variable. Now we can print both variables. What if we want to add these two lists together? Say if we were on a budget and we need to know the total cost of both lists. Well, since we stored both values, we can just add them together. Let's take it further by giving this function multiple parameters. For example, we might want to round the cost to the nearest whole value. We can add a parameter called roundCost, use an if statement to check if it's true, and then use the built-in round method. But if we run the code now, we get an error. Python is telling us it's missing one required positional argument. So we have two options. Option 1, we can give it what it's asking for by adding roundCost equals true when calling the function. But wait, another error. We have a name conflict because our parameter is called round, and the built-in method is also called round. Let's change this parameter to roundCost to avoid the conflict. Great, it's working, but what if you don't want to round the cost every time? We can give roundCost a default value of false so it only rounds when we tell it to. Let's add one more parameter, tax. Where I live, grocery tax is around 12%. Instead of hard-coding this, we can add it as a parameter to override that default if needed. Now with a quick calculation, we can add the tax to the total cost. Parameters let you customize what your function does based on input. Return values give you something back after the function runs. Take your time getting used to the errors and understanding what they're telling you. It's really part of the process. I'll see you in the next one.